clear His throne. Let every nation under heaven, oh, come and worship. Do not be afraid. My soul magnifies the Lord. My soul magnifies the Lord. He has done great things for me, great things for me. My soul magnifies the Lord. My soul magnifies the Lord. He has done great things for me, great things for me. Wonderful Counselor, everlasting Father, wonderful Counselor, everlasting Father. My soul magnifies the Lord. My soul magnifies the Lord. My soul magnifies the Lord. Lift it up. My soul magnifies the Lord. My soul magnifies the Lord. He has done great things for me, great things for me. My soul magnifies the Lord. My soul magnifies the Lord. He has done great things for me, great things for me. He has done great things. My
Good morning everyone and welcome to Clyde Valley Community Church Service online. My name is Elaine and I'm part of the leadership team here at CVCC. Despite the more restrictions, I hope you've had a good Christmas day, and isn't it lovely that we are actually still in that Christmas season, a time when we can focus and remember that Jesus came into this world as a baby, that he came into the world as light into the darkness. And it's good that we can still even today sing some songs and reflect on that coming of Jesus. We're going to continue in our service now with another Christmas song, and it's one that you'll probably know well, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. And after that, Kevin is going to come and he's going to give us today's message, which is the last part of our Christmas series, Jesus, Light of the World. So we're going to have some worship and then we're going straight into the message with Kevin. Thank you.
Hark the herald angels sing, glory righteousness, life and life to all he brings, risen with healing in his wings. Mild he lays his glory by, born that man no more to die, born to raise the sons of earth, born to give them second birth. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. King of heaven, come down. King of heaven, come down. Let your glory reign, shining like the day. King of heaven, come. King of heaven, rise up. Who could stand against us? You are strong to save in your mighty name. King of heaven, come.
King of heaven, come down.
Christ by highest heaven adored, Christ the everlasting Lord. Late in time, behold he come, offspring of the Virgin's womb. Mighty lays his glory by, born that man no more may die, born to raise the sons of earth, born to give them second birth. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King.
The newborn King.
King of heaven, come down. King of heaven, come down. Let your glory reign, shining like the day. King of heaven, come. King of heaven, rise up. Who can stand against us? You are strong to save in your mighty name. King of heaven, come. King of heaven,
King of heaven, come down.
King of heaven,
King of heaven, come down. King of heaven, come. King of heaven, come. King of heaven, come down. King of heaven, come down. Let your glory reign, shining like the day. King of heaven, come.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the last part in our series called The Light of the World. You know, there's something about candlelight. I think it's the way that you get the spark and then you get the flame, and it's kind of like the light just jumps into the darkness and suddenly you can see. You know, writing 700 years before Jesus was born, the prophet Isaiah foretold the birth of the Messiah. This is what he wrote. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. For a child is born to us, a son is given. The government will rest upon his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His government and its peace will never end, and he will rule with fairness and justice from the throne of our ancestor David for all eternity. Most of us have candles at Christmas. I think there's just something magical and comforting about that flickering flame, about the candlelight. When Isaiah wrote these words predicting how Jesus would step down from heaven and into the darkness and messiness of human life, maybe he was thinking about the way a candle flame jumps into the darkness and suddenly brings some light, and there's just that flickering hope. It's not a strong light, but it's a light. And Jesus is the light of the world. For many of us this year in particular, that light might feel very much like a candle flame. It's there, but it's just flickering. It's quite feeble and fragile. It's been a dark year. It's certainly not been the Christmas any of us would have wanted, and that fragile, flickering flame in the darkness is maybe how we view things right now. In many ways, it seems like we live our lives like a candle in the wind. We've all experienced the darkness this year, and all of us have our story to tell. In general, it's a story of pain and loss. Certainly a loss of family time this Christmas. It's not the Christmas any of us would have wanted. For some of us, it's been financial loss, perhaps the loss of a job. For others, it's been illness. Some of us have experienced bereavement. We've lost a parent, a grandparent, a spouse, a friend. Maybe it's a horrible coronavirus that caused that, maybe something else. But a loss hurts so much and casts such a deep shadow. Isaiah said, "The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned." And looking back on 2020, there's deep darkness, there's deep emotional darkness, the darkness of pain and loss. For many people, there's deep spiritual darkness, a loss of purpose, wondering what on earth is going on and not knowing who to turn to. Of course, there's deep physical darkness as well, which we all know. Perhaps it's the physical darkness that we most associate with fear, but actually emotional darkness and spiritual darkness bring their own terrors. I wonder if you've ever experienced that deep physical darkness. For me, there's a place that I associate with it. This is it here. This is Carlinghue Bay in Arbroath. When I was a boy, I used to go there with my dad and a few friends. It was almost like an annual outing. We would go to the Arbroath Caves. We'd explore the many caves that are in the cliffs there and have a barbecue on the beach. We'd do that every year. There's one cave in particular. It's really hard to find. It's called the Forbidden Cave. You have to search very carefully to find the entrance to this cave. It's just a small hole in the ground that you can barely fit through. But you go into that cave and you find yourself in a chamber. And when you go deeper into the cave, to the back of that first chamber, there's then a tunnel. And you follow that tunnel round, you come into a second, larger chamber. You're now deep underground. It's about 20 metres from front to back of this forbidden cave. And we would go in there and there would be that moment when my dad would say, "Let's turn the torches out." So we'd all put the torches out. And then there was deep darkness. Darkness and silence. The kind of silence where you can almost hear the blood pumping in your own head. Of course, when you're there with a bunch of 10, 11-year-old boys, the silence doesn't last very long. And in the dark, everyone's playing tricks on each other. There'd be something brushed across your cheek or something landed in your hair. And it's scary, not knowing what's going to happen next. Deep, scary darkness. And Jesus came to a part of the world that was in deep darkness. That fear, not knowing what's going to happen next. He came at a very dark period in the history of Israel. And yet it was certainly God's plan that Jesus should come to that geographical place at that particular point in time. The light of the world had stepped down into the darkness precisely so that he could identify with us when we go through the valley of the shadow of death, or 2020 as we now call it. See, the light of the world was born to poor, humble parents, so that the poor and the young and those who don't feel important could know that God is on their side. The light of the world was born into a homeless situation, so that the 1.6 billion people in the world who lack decent housing would know that God identifies with them. The light of the world came into Palestine, which was and still is one of the most troubled situations on earth. It was under Roman occupation. God knows what it's like when politics doesn't work for the people. The light of the world had to flee to Egypt with his family and spent 2 years there. So you cannot say that God does not understand the plight of the refugee or the asylum seeker. In many ways, he lived his life like a candle in the wind. This morning, I want us to think about how Jesus described himself as a light giver. We find it in John chapter 8 and verse 12. Jesus spoke to the people once more and said, "I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you don't have to walk in darkness, because you will have the light that leads to life." I am the light of the world. What does light of the world mean? Well, it doesn't mean that when Jesus came into the world, that suddenly the darkness was gone. Our own experience tells us that. And Jesus himself said, "In this world, you will have trouble. There will be darkness and pain in your life journey." Some of us are living that right now. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness, Jesus said. Which means if you don't follow him, you do walk in darkness. So there is darkness in the world. If you follow me, you don't walk in it. If you don't follow me, you do walk in it. The darkness is there. Jesus has not taken the darkness from our world. And you don't need me to tell you that. So what does light of the world mean? Well, let me give you 3 things that I think it means. Firstly, Jesus being the light of the world means that there is no other light. If there's going to be light in this world, then it's Jesus. It's Jesus or darkness. There is no other light. I am the light of the world. He didn't say I'm one of the lights of this world. He said, I am the light of the world. You know, you walk into a dark room, the first thing you do is you put a light on. You don't want to be stumbling around in the dark. You need to put a light on so that through that light you can make sense of what's round about you, make sense of your surroundings. In the same way, we need Jesus, the light of the world, to make sense of our surroundings, to make sense of this world. Now, if life for you is good and bright just now and very positive, well, that's great. I know that for many listening to this message, life isn't like that. Life is a bit dark and a bit scary, and there's so much that's unknown. You know, we say 2020 has been a terrible year, and yet we don't know what 2021 holds for us. We don't know what's in the future. I was reminded this week of the words of C.S. Lewis in his book, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. He talks about Narnia, where there's an evil grip on the land, and it's described as being always winter, but never Christmas. And maybe that's what it feels like this year. You know, with the Christmas we've just had, maybe those words are more poignant than ever. Always winter, but never Christmas. Because one of the things we've discovered this year is that we, humankind, are not as clever as we thought we were. You know, we've certainly found that our politicians and leaders can't really help us very much. Science gives us light at the end of the tunnel, but really we need some light in the middle of the darkness. And despite all our advances, which are many, and all of humankind's achievements, which are great, we still find ourselves stumbling about in the dark and unsure what's coming next, with our lives turned upside down. And no matter how much control we think we have in our lives, at any moment something can happen that just can rob us of that assurance and leave us in the dark. And then when the deep darkness comes, at times of serious illness, of financial ruin, and especially times of bereavement, there is only one light in this world, and his name is Jesus. So I guess the question for you this morning is a personal one. Have you chosen to live in the light? Jesus is the light of the world. And the second thing about the light of the world is that all the world, everyone in the world, needs Jesus as their light, because there is no other light. Everyone needs Jesus. This world was made for this light. It was made for Jesus, the light of the world. Now, at first, the light exposes sin and exposes brokenness. I recently decided to clear out my garage. I had this novel idea that maybe I could put a car in the garage rather than all the accumulated junk that's in there at the moment. I thought it wouldn't take very long to tidy it out. But actually, the first thing I had to do was to fix the lights. I've got 4 fluorescent lights in the garage, but 2 of them weren't working. So the first thing I had to do was fix them. That was quite easy, new starters, and suddenly all the lights were on. But actually, when the lights came on, the scale of the problem became very obvious. The rubbish that was there, the thick dust that was there, the stuff that I'd forgotten about hiding in the corners, mostly broken stuff, half-finished projects, a few bad memories there. It was going to take a lot longer to do the housekeeping than I thought it was when the light came, when the light shone on it. Jesus said, the light has come into the world, but people love darkness rather than light. I wonder why he said that. Maybe it's something to do with that fact that when the light comes on, it shows up. It shows up the brokenness, it shows up the failure, it shows up the sin, it shows up the shame. So part of the reason that people love darkness rather than light is the light is a bit scary when it shows us what we're really like. I wonder if you've ever noticed in the Christmas story, when the angels come, angels always come with this radiant light. But it didn't matter who they came to, whether it was Mary or Joseph or the shepherds, the first thing the angel always said was, do not be afraid. Why were they scared? Then the light, radiant light has come. Why is fear the first thing? As we come close to God, the more we approach him, the more his light shines into our lives. The more scary that can be because it shows up our brokenness and it shows up our sin. So many people choose to love darkness rather than light. They stumble on in the dark rather than come close to Jesus. Because everyone, all of us, we know how sinful and broken we are. So we'd rather stumble in the dark. And so many people in our world live their lives like a candle in the wind, never knowing who to cling to when the rain sets in. And they need Jesus as a light because there is no other light. Every other philosophy, every other religion is the story of man trying to search for God, trying to search for meaning, trying to make sense of their surroundings, but all the time stumbling about in the dark. It's man trying to reach out and find God. And all the time, well, the light of the world has come to us. It's not so much that we need to search for God. God has stepped into his world. The light of the world has come into his creation. And he's come to bring light to the human condition. Yes, he shows up all the housekeeping that needs done. He shows up the sin and the shame and the brokenness. But God loved the world so much that he gave his only son, the light of the world, who did not come to judge the world, but came to forgive and to heal and to save. But I think it goes even deeper than that. This light enables us to see everything in its true light. The light enables us to see this world in all its beauty. When Christ's light comes into our lives, we see the world as God sees it. Again, it was C.S. Lewis who said this: I believe in Christianity as I believe the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. The light of the world helps us to make sense of this world. People need Jesus as the light because there's no other light in this dark world. So I wonder who you are leading towards this light. Who are you sharing the love and light of Jesus with this Christmas and this new year? We're surrounded by people who are living their lives like a candle in the wind. Let's show them who they can cling to when the rain sets in. And the final thing about the light of the world is that one day this world will be filled with the light of Jesus and nothing else. You know, we live with our flickering candle just now. We live with the tension of the darkness that surrounds us in this world. We've seen a lot of darkness in 2020, but there's a day coming when the light of the world will be seen in all his glory. Here's what the Bible says. Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. And the city of God has no need of sun or moon, for the glory of God illuminates the city, and the Lamb is its light, Jesus, the light of the world. So at the end of this most difficult year, my prayer is that the light of the world will shine in your heart and in your home and lead you into the unknown, which is 2021. He is the light of the world. There is no other light. About 80 years ago, when Britain was heading into the unknown future of 1940 in the middle of a world war, King George VI addressed the nation. Princess Elizabeth, our Queen, 13 years old, had given her father a poem, and he made that poem part of his speech that year, just going into the new year. So here we are going into the unknown, 2021. And I want to leave you with that same poem. I said to the man at the gate of the year, give me a light that I may tread safely into the darkness. He replied, go out into the darkness and put your hand in the hand of God. That will be to you better than a light and safer than a known path. So I went forth and, finding the hand of God, trod gladly into the night. And he led me toward the hills and the breaking of day in the lone east. May the light of the world lead you into 2021 and the breaking of day. Thank you.
The world waits for a miracle. The heart longs for a little bit of hope. Oh come, Emmanuel. A child prays for peace on earth, and she's calling out from a sea of hurt. Oh come, Emmanuel. And can you hear the angels singing? Glory to the light of the world. Glory to the light of the world is here.
Drought breaks with tears of a mother. baby's cry is the sound of love. Come down, Emmanuel.
Oh, here's a song for the suffering. Here's the sign, the Prince of Peace has come. He has come, Emmanuel.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes, to fulfill the law and prophet. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory, to the cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom come, and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in yourself you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son,
stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death, and the dead rose from their